The Florida Gators are winners of the offseason.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Happy Friday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find all my written work about the Florida Gators at swampsignal.substack.com. We got scouting reports coming out of the transfer portal players there. There's free subscriptions. There's premium content on there as well if you want to do that, but all the scouting reports are free. Film studies will be premium. But the Florida Gators are winners this offseason, which feels good to say. Right. And feels good to kind of feel like we might actually be right. Like that's also a big thing there. I want to make this clear. I am not saying that the Florida Gators are the winners of the offseason. I'm not doing the offseason champion thing that we hear all the time. But I am going to say that the Florida Gators are winners this offseason. I mean, you talk about just what you had on this roster last year, right? Because this roster was talented last year. I don't care what people say. They went 4-8, yeah, but I don't care. I say a lot of it's coaching, right? And I kind of feel validated by saying that it's coaching because when you look at where a lot of the players left, they still went to the Power Four, and a lot of players stayed in the SEC. So I think that that's further confirmation that, yeah, it was coaching and not the talent on the roster there. Which, again, you lost that talent, but coaching was what held your team back. Go back to last offseason. Go to basically any show where I spoke about what my expectations were for the team. And oftentimes you will hear me say that if coaching catches up to the talent in 2025, the Florida Gators are going to be in the playoff. And then as the season gets on, you will hear me say that not only did coaching not catch up to the talent, but I think that the gap between the talent and coaching is even wider now. And it feels so good to say that that's not the case anymore, right? Like I said, coaching was the thing holding this team back last year, and the Florida Gators fired Billy Napier and hired John Sumrall. And I remember when Billy Napier got fired, John Sumrall was a name that we mentioned on this show as a potential name or a guy that would be on my list. And then he got hired. And what did I say when he got hired? That I don't know if he'll work at Florida. I think it's really tough to be able to know if a coach will work at a specific school. But I know that the Florida Gators got a damn good football coach. That's it. That's all I knew, is that the Florida Gators got a damn good football coach and that he hired some damn good coaches, right? We've talked about it a lot during the transfer portal window where the Florida Gators and John Sumrall, when putting together the staff, prioritized the important spots or the most important spots, right? It was offensive coordinator. Who can I get to be my offensive coordinator? What really held this team back last year? Who can I get to be my offensive coordinator in 2026? And he went and got Buster Faulkner, who is one of the most sought after offensive coordinators in football. He is someone that a lot of fans wanted his name mentioned with every opening that was available. Got a couple of G5 head coaching looks and opted to leave Georgia Tech and come to the SEC and try to cut his teeth here and prove himself, right? Then you look at the defensive side, and he got Brad White from Kentucky, who's been an SEC defensive coordinator for 6 or maybe 7 years. I'm not going to do the thing, don't worry. And I'm actually not going to do it this time. It's 6 or 7 years, and has been successful just about every year. People talk about the numbers, but I mean, the easiest point to dispute it is look at Florida's defensive numbers. They're what, 60th in scoring, 64th in scoring, I think, and Kentucky's 73rd. Do you think Florida is 64th? No, but their offense shot them in the foot. Why does Kentucky not get the same thing when every year we talk about Kentucky's offense being terrible? Okay. So you got I think you got one elite coordinator hire in Buster Faulkner, and I think you got one good to great coordinator hire in Brad White. Then we talk about the trenches, where Florida on the offensive line was an absolute failure last year under Rob Sale. And John Sumrall went out and got Phil Trautwein. Played for Florida, won at Florida, was successful as an offensive line coach prior to Florida. I call him one of the better offensive line coaches in the country. Maybe one of the best range, right? And you have that now as your offensive line coach. And he comes in and, again, you immediately say, well, we know that the offensive line is going to be a lot better in 2026 than it was in 2025. On the defensive line, you retain Gerald Chapman, which Gerald Chapman, of course, was the only position coach that was retained from 2025. He is one of the best defensive line coaches in the country, and he is one of the few coaches, him and Phil Trautwein, are the only two coaches that I look at and I say, whatever they want, I'm good with. Right? Like I'm not gonna fret too much if they want to if Gerald Chapman wants a defensive lineman or if Phil Trautwein wants an offensive lineman, even if I disagree with the take or the value or anything like that, they're better, right? Like they've done it, they've proven themselves multiple times. I'm going to give them that. They're not going to hit every single pick, right, or every single player. They're not. No one does. But odds are they're more accurate than the overwhelming majority of coaches. The rest of the staff is filled out with some guys from Tulane taking positional demotions, like Joe Craddock, who is the offensive coordinator at Tulane, is now the quarterback coach here. Evan McKissick, who was the offensive line coach at Tulane, is back at the tight ends where he was previously before taking the offensive line coach job at Tulane, which he only had for a year. And I don't think he wanted to take that job. I think he was kind of like the only available person that could have fit and slotted in there, considering the time constraints they had. Then you also look at some of the young up-and-comers, right? Brandon Harris, Marcus Davis, that are relatively unproven, at least at the SEC level, and have gotten good production from their guys every year. Like he went, all right, I'm going to prioritize these positions on the offense or these positions on the coaching staff, and the rest I'm just going to get guys that are proven to get production from their guys. Whether or not you want to talk about, oh, they're fantastic recruiters, they're fantastic developers, any of that. Get guys that get production from your unit. It's about winning right now. And you win at Florida, recruiting will come. Don't worry about that. And there's the retention, which we'll talk a bit more about in later on, but the retention of key parts of this roster, right? DJ Lagway's gone. Trey Wilson's gone. Jordan Castell's gone. Hayden Hanson's gone. Yeah, I'm not talking about guys in the draft, right? That one was happening. But portal guys, Aiden Mizell is gone. You lost quite a bit to the portal, but none of it really felt devastating, right? Like none of the guys that left were really backbreaking. Jacoby Jackson's gone. He's at Ohio State too. None of the guys that left are really backbreaking. You retained the key players though in Vernell Brown III and Dallas Wilson at receiver, Jadan Baugh in the backfield, Jaden Woods on the edge, and Miles Graham at linebacker. Two of those guys were, for a while, rumored to hit the portal, right? Jadan Baugh and Dallas Wilson were both, a lot of people were like, oh yeah, they're going to hit the portal. It's going to be tough to keep them. They're going to hit the portal. And you kept them. And I think that speaks a lot to what this coaching staff has planned on offense and defense and how they intend on using those guys right away. And like John Sumrall said, I forgot the podcast, but David Soderquist posted the clip on Twitter that, he's like, I don't want to do this whole like, oh yeah, it's going to take some time to win. If we don't win right now, I'm going to be pissed. Looking forward to that. We're going to talk more about this offense when we get back with Locked On Gators. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. So each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets that you like most, so you can get some more juice on the bets that you already like. It doesn't get better than that, right? It doesn't. Talking about Matt Stafford throw 2 passing touchdowns. Hell yeah, let's do it. Juice the odds too. You make your picks, then you apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free, whether it's the podcast and on YouTube. And the Florida Gators offense, also winners of the offseason. I mean, there was no other direction you can go than up from what we had to sit through last year, right? I mean, and I think that with the Florida Gators in 2025, it was especially frustrating because like most of us remember the Muschamp days, right? A lucky select few have been able to kind of block it out of their minds, and I'm jealous of you if you're in that sect of fans. I'm jealous that you were able to block that from your minds. But I think that 2025 might have been more frustrating than the Muschamp days, because with the Muschamp days, I kind of expected, bad offense there. With Florida in 2025, you had a lot of talent at just about every spot, and it was just an absolute failure, right? You had coaches and players after playing Florida going, yeah, like we kind of knew what was going on. We kind of knew what was happening. We knew the calls that they were doing. It was the same thing we saw from them last year. And that's frustrating. Luckily for us, that's not going to be the case anymore because we've got Buster Faulkner. And frankly, I don't think anybody really knows what the hell he's going to do. I don't. There's a bunch of people who are wrong and say that it's just going to look like the Georgia Tech offense. There's a bunch of people that I also think are wrong, saying that it's just going to be an air raid. I think what you're going to see is part of this next evolution of offense that is going to look more like, I'll call it like a spread raid, right? I think the run game, you're going to see some good spread principles there. I think you're going to see more of the, like we did see at Georgia Tech, like a power spread. You're going to see a good bit of that. But I don't think that Georgia Tech's passing game was one that you can compare to an air raid truly. And I think that in Florida, you're going to have the talent to say, hey, our passing game is going to look like an air raid, but our run game is going to look like the power spread. And that sounds like heaven to me, to be honest. I'm going to be completely honest with you. That sounds like heaven. But even if it's not that, even if it is, closer to Georgia Tech or closer to an air raid, it's going to be better than Florida Gators fans had to sit through last year. You've got a better coordinator, better play caller. Then, like I mentioned, the retention that you have. Jadan Baugh, Vernell Brown III, Dallas Wilson. You brought like your big three on offense, right? And behind them, you have behind Baugh, you have Evan Pryor, London Montgomery, Duke Clark is back, Byron Lewis is back. Receivers, speed throughout, right? TJ Abrams is in. You have Justin Williams and Davian Gross are both going to be really fun offensive players. Marquez Daniels is a giant. And then you brought in some experienced depth in the wide receiver room too. And so your personnel in general in offense got better. Tight end room, way more dynamic than it was last year. Don't know if they'll be better blockers. Kind of don't expect that, but maybe. But again, way more dynamic, right? I think everybody that you brought in the tight end room is way more dynamic than you had last year, where you lost Hayden, you lost Tony Livingston, Amir Jackson stepping into a larger role. Evan Shika, by the way, that's how it's pronounced. The New Haven tight end, Evan Shika, is coming in and more dynamic than we had. Lakota Dipri, more dynamic than we had. Luke Harpering, more dynamic than we had. Like everybody's more dynamic than you had. Whether or not they'll actually be better, different, but more dynamic than you had, and that's an important part. And the offensive line, of course, which it's interesting because on the offensive line, you lost 3 guys that started. 2 of them are going to be NFL draft picks. And the third might be an NFL draft pick. Like Jake Slaughter is going to be an NFL draft pick. There's very little doubt about that in anybody's mind, right? Going to be an NFL draft pick, probably for a team that's more into zone running or airing it out. I don't think you're going to get much value from him if you're a power run offense and you're like, yeah, we're going to go get Jake Slaughter. That's just not his game, right? Austin Barber going to get drafted. I don't know where he's going to play in the NFL because I've spoken to people that have said, they don't think that he's agile enough to play tackle in the NFL, but they also don't think that he's powerful enough to play guard in the NFL. And so that kind of puts him in no man's land. I don't know if he's just like someone that sticks around for a long time, maybe as a swing lineman. Right? Like teams are trying to be are trying to be more versatile with their roster spots. Maybe bring in a guy like Austin Barber and you say, hey, you may never be a starter for us. You might never play for us, but you're going to be available to play both guard spots, both tackle spots, and we'll play where you play, right? Maybe that's it. Then Damian George, I've been very vocal about my opinions of him. I still think he's going to get at least an NFL look. Might be a late day 3 pick from a team that is going to be more power run oriented. And maybe that's going to be their plan. It's just, hey, let's get him out there. Let's see what we can get from him. And you're replacing all of them. And yet somehow I feel so much more comfortable with the offensive line this year than I did last year. Part of that is just straight coaching, right? Phil Trautwein's in immediate multiple level upgrade over what you had from Rob Sale. And you also have, just the talent in the room that Rob Sale did bring in. Because that was the thing too with Rob Sale was all the recruiting that they did on the offensive line was lower ranked guys with athleticism, power, size, and just like a nasty demeanor. And you brought in all those guys and you said, we'll coach you into a good offensive lineman. The issue with that, and the issue that we spoke about from pretty much day one, was you need to be able to coach them then. And if they don't develop, then you're screwed. And they didn't develop, and so they were screwed. And when basically nobody develops, it's not on the players at that point. It's something with the coaching. And with Phil Trautwein, now you have most of those players that were brought in to be these long-term developmental pieces. And now you can actually develop them. And you brought in some guys with you from Penn State that you're comfortable with. Buster Faulkner brought a guy from Georgia Tech that he's comfortable with. You brought in a lineman from Stanford that has starting experience as a true freshman. And you get to just work with everything. And I think that we're going to look at an offensive line that is going to play better as a unit than Florida's offensive line played in 2025, even if your players individually are not better. I don't know if they're going to be better or not. I'm just saying that I don't know if they're going to be better or not as individuals, but I feel pretty damn confident that as a unit, they're going to be much improved over what we saw in 2025. We're going to talk about the defense when we get back with Locked On Gators. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life, and this year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, and honestly just trying to read them, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. It is a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free, so you listen to wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And to wrap up today's show, we're going to talk about the Florida Gators defense. And they're a different story, right? We spoke about it yesterday on the live show because we had an insider program member ask about it or talk about it and ask if we spoke about it. So we did. But defensively, the scheme's going to be different, right? The scheme's going to be different from what Ron Roberts ran. And I do think that's going to be more beneficial for the guys up front. I think that there are some defenses, or I know that there are some defenses that limit what defensive linemen can do. There's the story of, I forgot who the defensive was. It might have been Greg Williams when he was the defensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns. And Myles Garrett was like, yeah, he told me I could only do these 3 moves. I was held back. I was allowed to do 3 moves and that's it. And I do think that at Florida, there were restrictions on what players could do up front, because so much of what they were supposed to do schematically up front was eat blocks, maintain that gap discipline, or just not even maintain gap discipline. Just make sure you're in those gaps. Like not going through those gaps, make sure you're in those gaps so that other players can come make plays. And I don't think that that's going to be a thing you deal with this year. I think there's going to be more freedom up front this year. I think there's going to be more playmaking potential up front this year, regardless of the talent, right? Because we know the defensive line had talent. Mekhi Boyroe, hell of a nose tackle. Isn't in Florida because, well, Florida was not going to pay the amount that they wanted for a nose tackle. That's fine. I don't have to be like, oh, kid's bag chasing, anything like that. Like, there is such a thing of a school saying, hey, this is how much we value this player, and a player saying, well, this is how much I value myself. And if a school gives you what you value yourself at, that's not saying, oh, he's bag chasing. That's saying this is the value that I hold. That school holds the same value for me that I do. Like, I don't know. I think fans get too caught up into like, oh, he's going for money. And it's like, yeah, he might be going for money, but that doesn't mean he's chasing the money. That means that he thinks he's worth this. If Florida feels different, then Florida feels different. That's why I don't get upset about stuff like that. Because he's a hell of a nose tackle. Tyreek Sapp, going to be in the NFL. George Gumbs, going to be in the NFL. Caleb Banks, still, despite not even really playing this year, still a potential first-round pick. I don't think it happens, but a potential first-round pick in the 2026 NFL draft. You lost talent, right? Like, we know there was talent up front. It wasn't a talent issue for a good portion of last year. I think it was a scheme issue. I think it was just being restricted with what you're allowed to do as a defensive lineman, on top of, if you're an edge rusher, being asked to drop in the coverage a bunch. Okay? I think that was a bigger issue. Now you've reloaded, right? Emmanuel Obadejo is going to be the big name defensive lineman that you brought in. That's going to be playing more of like a 4-eye, which I explained this on the live show yesterday. Say I'm the offensive tackle and the quarterback is to my left towards the orange behind me. If you're lined up head up with me, you're the 5 tech. If you're lined up right outside or right there, or sorry, you're the 4 tech. If you're lined up right inside, you're the 4-eye. Okay? If you're lined up outside, 5 tech. You're lined up head up, 4, outside, 5, inside, 4-eye. Okay? Emmanuel Obadejo is going to be playing, I think, from the 4-eye, or maybe the 4, into the 3. Maybe occasionally as a light nose, but I don't think that really happens. I think he can do it. I don't think it happens too much. But you brought in a versatile player. That was your big name piece that Texas A&M and Missouri were recruiting, and how a lot of people often say is like, it's not about who you bring in, it's about who you beat for them, right? Like that's a better indicator of a player than what their ranking says. Is who else was recruiting this player? Who else was pursuing this player? And if it's Texas A&M and Missouri, two teams that are spending a ton of money in the portal, especially on the defensive line, and you got him, usually a pretty good indicator that you prioritize him, right? And that he is a priority to you and that you got your guy. So Florida added Emmanuel Ibadejo to get that. Then you have guys like DJ Coleman in the safety room. Versatile guy that could play nickel, could play safety. You have Cam Dooley from Kentucky. Versatile guy that could play nickel, could play safety. You have Kanye Clark, versatile guy that could play corner, could play nickel, maybe could play safety, but he hasn't done it. I don't know. Like, there's a bunch of places that list him as safety. I don't know why. He took the Triquez Bridges route in the sense of he was playing a different position and then with injuries was forced to play outside. That's what he did in 2025. He was playing nickel. Injuries happened. He started playing outside corner. He finished the season playing with 2 starts at outside corner. Versatile. He was a walk-on in 2023. And then medical redshirt in 2024, played in 2025. 3 years of eligibility, right? You got all that. Like that's the versatility that we're talking about, reloading talent. That's not mentioning, DK Lou, Mason Clinton, Jordy Lowry. Like, that's not mentioning those guys, really. I'm just talking about reloading with versatile players. That's what you have there. DK Lou could play nose and 3-tech. Mason Clinton played a nose and 3-tech at Southern Miss, but I don't think he's going to be the kind of guy that plays in the nose, really, or at the nose, really, in the SEC. I don't think that's his game. I don't think that's his style. And frankly, I don't think it fits here. But defensively, like your scheme is going to be more player friendly. Talent, you have reloaded. I'm not saying that you have better talent. I'm not going to say you have more talent this year on the defensive side than you had last year. I am going to say that your scheme is more player friendly this year than it was last year. That you've got more versatile players this year compared to last year. And what is probably going to be most important when we're talking about the success of the defense in 2026 is that I don't think they're going to be dealing with an offense that is going to constantly shoot them in the foot. That's the offense wasn't even shooting themselves in the foot last year. The offense was shooting the defense in the foot last year. I don't think you're going to deal with that this year. I'm really looking forward to that. Really, because now we get to see what the defenders really look like. And that's going to be fun. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever it's the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back at the absolute latest. We've got is it Saturday or Sunday? I'm doing this live, right? Like that's the mentality that we have here. I'm pretty sure it's Saturday, the game. Yeah, Florida, Auburn, Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll be back at the absolute latest immediately after that, trying to set up a crossover with Zach Blackerby from Locked On Auburn before that. Hopefully that'll happen. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all of my written work with New York Giants on SI and swampsignal.substack.com for the Florida Gators written work. And I'll see you all next time.